Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're working on the second block in the Dear Jane quilt. It is the A212 Buckle My Shoe block. This is from the Dear Jane quilt book. Today it's going to be in kind of a pinky tone. The last one I did it in a blue tone. Just kind of mixing them up. I've got two fabrics this time for this quilt, and I've got a bunch of different background fabrics. They're the white fabrics that I'm using. The cuts on this one is a little bit different. Does require a little bit more math. I'm going to show you a method on how to make some flying geese blocks. We're going to be making half square triangles. We're going to be making an hourglass block. So this one has quite a few different types of blocks to make in this one. So bear with me, I'm going to get these all cut up and I will bring you back once they're cut. Okay guys, so there is all of our pieces that we need for this quilt. We've got a lot of every little bit of everything. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get them all sewn together. I'm going to bring it over to the sewing table and we're going to start sewing. The first thing I'm going to sew is the flying geese blocks. That way I can get those out of the way, and then I will do the hourglass block because those are all like the pieced blocks, and then the rest of them go onto those blocks. So we're going to take you over there and we're going to get started sewing. Okay guys, we are at the sewing machine and we're going to be working on the flying geese blocks. We are going to want to mark the back of each of the smaller squares. I don't know if you can see my line there. It's pretty light and faint, but it's just at the diagonal from corner to corner, and then we're going to be putting them in opposite corners of our background where the diagonal goes straight across. You're going to meet the diagonal with the other diagonal that you drew on the back. And I have marked a couple of these, and I'm just going to mark this one here really quick so that I can get it on to the back here. And then when you guys mark, just remember that your pen or pencil has a little bit of thickness to it, so get accurate lines on when you're marking. Make sure that the ruler is just a little tiny bit to the side of where you want your pin to be marked. That way you get accurate points. Alright, so we're going to move these little guys out of the way, and what we're going to do is we're going to sew 1/4 inch on each side of the drawn lines. We're going to move 1/4 inch to this side and 1/4 inch to that side, and we are going to sew on each of those sides. So I'm going to go ahead and get sewing. Just going to flip it around, pull out a little of that thread. I have a 1/4 inch foot on that has a guide on it, so I'm putting that guide right on my line, and I'm using that to keep my stitches where I want them. Okay, so we got that done. I'm going to put my starter strip back in place. We're going to trim this off the machine. Now I'm going to go over to the cut table, and I'm going to cut right on my drawn line. I'm going to cut right across on each of these. I might actually press them first and then cut them, and then I will be right back after. Well, and then once you've cut them, you're going to want to press them open. Press the pink, mine's pink, whatever your colors. Press your color open and have your seam facing the darker color, not your whites. So I'm gonna go get that done and I'll be right back. Okay guys, we are done with pressing these open, getting them cut apart. And I know what you're thinking, they look a little funny, right? Like, how am I gonna make a flying geese with that? Well, each one of those two bigger squares that we cut out, they're actually gonna make 4 flying geese. So we're gonna end up with 8 in total. We only need to have 6 of those. So what we need to do next is we need to draw a line on the remaining squares that we have here, and this will be our sew line. Or I'm sorry, this won't be our sew line. We're going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to sew on each side of this diagonal line again. That one's already marked. And I ran out of one of my fabrics as I was cutting, so I have one extra of these ones, but it's gonna be fine. It's a scrappy quilt for a reason. I am trying to give them a little consistency, and each block's gonna be in the same color tone, but other than that, that's about all I'm doing. Alright, so we got those lines drawn on the back there, and I'm going to put them on the opposite angle. So they're going to, the line's going to go down the center, and we're going to stitch 1/4 of an inch down each side of those. Now, if you feel you need to pin here, go for it, pin. Nothing says you can't pin. There's no quilt police in this. This is just for you. These are scraps. This isn't for like anyone. Guys, so those are done. I'm gonna go ahead and just sew that out a little bit. Put this here, sew this on, and clip it apart. And we're gonna clip them apart from each other. These ones don't need to stay connected. There's no magic with that. Sometimes it is, but not with these ones. Alright, so I'm going to go press these and cut them again, and I will bring them back and show you the magic. Alright guys, so there we go. We've got our 4 at a time flying geese blocks with no waste. We just need to cut the little dog ears off, and as long as our blocks are measuring at 2 1/4 inches, we did great, and they are perfect. Okay, so we're just going to trim off all the dog ears now, and we are done with our flying geese blocks. We're going to set those aside, and we're going to start on the hourglass block. So I'm going to get these trimmed up, and then I will be back once that's done. Alright guys, so we are going to do the hourglass block now, and we've got our the last 2 large squares that we've cut. We've got those 2 left, and we're going to draw a line on, or an X, along the background fabric, just because it'll be easier to see. So we're going to draw an X just right across here. Line there. Line here, and then you're going to choose one line, and you're going to sew 1/4 of an inch on each side of that one line. It doesn't matter which line you choose, just as long as you choose one. Then we're going to sew down the other side of the line. I started. I'm going to cut that off of the machine here. Alright, and then what we're going to do is we're going to cut down on both lines. So we're going to cut both of those lines. And I will be back with that. Alright you guys, so I've got those cut. I've got them pressed open. I've pressed them to the dark. Pretty much everything will go to the dark. And this will give us 2 hourglass blocks, and we only need one of them. So we're going to make both of them, and just like with the flying geese, we're going to keep them for possibly needing them for another block, because with some of the Dear Jane blocks you do a lot of the same patterns. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make them both, and I'm going to set one off to the side, and I'm going to incorporate the other one into this one. And we are going to make sure we sew 1/4 inch. And when we press to the dark on both of these, it makes it so that our seams nest. I'll show you on this block. When you're nesting your seams, you're going to make sure that your seams interlock with each other. So by putting them one in one direction, one in the other direction, your seams lock together, which makes it so that your points will match and there's not a big gap in between those blocks. So it does help a lot to make sure those are interlocked. There's a lot of videos that you can see that show you how that works as well, but we're just locking our seams so that there's no gap in between. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get this sewn. And I'm just going to sew this other piece too while I'm here, because I like to have stuff already finished and not have little pieces laying around that I'm like, what is this for? If it's already in a block form, it's a lot easier to deal with. Okay guys, so we got those done. They are already in the hourglass block form. I'm going to go press them really quick and I will be back. Okay guys, so we've got those pressed and we've got them opened, and we've now got our 2 hourglass blocks. To help reduce the bulk on these blocks, I have pressed the seams open because there's a lot of fabric that's coming right there in the middle. So by opening up the block, it helps to reduce that and make it so you don't have that big chunky lump in the middle. And then we're just going to trim off the dog ears once again on this block so that we don't have them in our way. I know some people don't even trim those off, but I don't want them, so I'm trimming mine. Alright, so we're going to also set these ones off to the side because we are now done with that. So we are now on to making our half square triangles. I take a second break there. My dogs decided they needed to start howling because, you know, that's just what they do in the middle of the day. Why not, right? So anyways, so we're going to do the 2 at a time half square triangle method, where we're going to make 2 half square triangles, which means we're going to put a line down the middle on this one, and we are just going to sew on either side of the line. Simplicity's sake is why we're doing this either side of the line. We could do, you know, the easy 8 method where we get 8 of them, but I don't need 8. I only need 4. So that's why we're doing it this way. So we've got our line drawn on the back of each of those on our white fabrics, and we're going to just sew on either side of the line. got our lines sewn on either side, so we've got a 1/2 inch on each side. I'm using a light fabric or a light thread here, so it's probably really hard for you to see that, but there's a line drawn on each side, and now we're going to cut just right down that line so that we can get our 1/2 square triangles. And I'm going to go do that right now at the cut table, and I will be right back. Okay guys, so on these ones I have them just a little bit bigger than they need to be, so I need to trim them down to size so that I have them accurate in my piecing. So I'm gonna go get those trimmed, and then I will be right back. Alright guys, so I got those all fixed now. They are the correct size they need to be, which, you know, was my fault, but I did get to be able to square them up, which is nice. So now I know these for sure are exactly what size I need them to be and not have them off by any little bit. So that's good. So now it's time to set up our block. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna get that all laid out here. Okay, so we are ready to go ahead and start setting this block up in our layout. So go ahead and we'll get that started. So we have a couple of leftover blocks from this one, which are 2 flying geese block and a hourglass block. So I'm going to just set that back in my scraps and use that for a future project. So now we're going to sew this together, and we're going to do row. It's actually, yeah, so I'm going to do this one, I think, row by row, just to keep everything in order. So I'll do a row, and then I will take it off the machine, and then I'll do the next row. We'll just go row down so that it will be, they don't get messed up in my layout, because this one's a little more complicated and I don't want to mess up the blocks. So I'll bring you guys back over to the sewing machine and we will get going. I'm just finger pressing as I go. I'm not taking these back to the press table quite yet. Before I sew them together before I sew them all together, I will press them all first so that my seams go the way that I want them to go, and they lay better in the overall block. So this is the last piece for the rows, and then I'm going to go press them so that each seam alternates in direction, so that when we sew them together all of our seams nest. So I'm going to go do that now, and then I will be right back and we will put the block together. Okay guys, so I've got them all pressed. They are now opposite directions on my seams, and now we're just going to start sewing it together. I'm going to just go down the rows and sew them. just picked up the last row, the last 2 rows, and sewed them together, and now we'll be sewing them both to the center section. I'll leave that one on so that I don't mistake which one goes where. I'm going to press my seam with just a finger press so you guys can see that. So I'm just opening it up and pressing it up because there's less bulk in there. So it's just a lot of seams coming together. And then we're going to make sure when we put it to our center block that we're going in the right direction. And if we got in the right direction, everything will nest. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go get this press, and I'll bring you over to the cut table and we will open it up and get it and see how well we did on our block. Okay, so I lost the video of me trimming the block, but here it is finished for you. I also got another block that is just a solid pink block. This was my practice one, so hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe.